The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Intelligent Workflow Streamlines ESI Processing webinar. This webinar will be presented by Jim McGann and Ed Moak. Jim is the Vice President of Marketing at Index Engines. He has extensive experience with eDiscovery and information management in the Fortune 2000 sector. Jim is a frequent writer and speaker on the topics of big data, backup tape remediation, electronic discovery, and records management. He has written articles for ARMA, ILTA, Forbes, Inside Counsel, and other leading publications. Ed Moak is the Vice President of Operations and Professional Services at Index Engines. Please type any questions for Jim or Ed in the question area to the right of your screen. So let's begin. Jim?
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. So if you do have questions, as Jen mentioned, feel free to type them in the question area on the right side, and we'll try to take them throughout the session. Otherwise, you can send them. I'll put my email address up at the end to myself, and we'll get it to the correct people to get back to you on with answers. So for those of you that don't know Index Engines, we are a software company that has a product called Octane. Octane is really an information management platform that really supports eDiscovery and the identification, collection, preservation, and processing of ESI. Some of the unique attributes of it is a unified platform, has the ability to connect all sources of data that may come across your desk, from network data, forensic images, and backup tapes. Very efficient. Really eliminates processing bottlenecks. I mean, the speed and the power of the engine itself allows you to get to the work at hand very quickly. Very automated. You can set up processes to manage ESI in advance and collect data very effectively, which Ed will show you in the demonstration, and very cost effective. The key advantage is really it's the only platform that really can support all data sources. So I think a lot of people know us to be able to support data off of backup tapes, which is one of the key advantages of Index Engines. But if you're processing forensic images, email, desktops, online data, you can use a single tool to support the online identification collection of that content. And we find clients that are using a unified platform that enables a single search across that entire universe of data, deduped, denested, and so on, allows a more defensible and reliable audit trail. Very scalable. We support projects that are in the petabytes of data, so large-scale indexing of content with processing speeds over a terabyte per hour is the fastest available on the market today. And a very intuitive, flexible interface, so really it's designed for rapid culling and tagging of relevant ESI, and the option to really give you flexible collection and preservation options, which we'll show you today. Version 4.5 is about to be announced. This is kind of a sneak peek into that version. We're announcing it next week with some new features, exciting new features that we're looking forward to. The key overriding message of this release is really expanded workflow. We're really broadening the EDRM functionality. So EDRM, our specialty has really been in the identification, collection, and preservation of ESI. We're going to be adding some review capabilities with a partnership with Relativity. So you'll see that in the demonstration today. So all the way from identification and collection down through now review and analysis using Relativity, you have a single audit trail that is defensible and cost-effective. So a lot of our clients and partners have been using multiple tools in the past to process data. With this new platform, you can now use one tool all the way down through review and ensure reliability of the content. As I mentioned, we're announcing Relativity support next week. It's our version 4.5 will support load file into Relativity, which Ed will show you today in the demonstration. Future version, which is coming out after 4.5, will support tighter integration, which we're excited about, which allows deeper support for Relativity, which we won't be showing you today, but hopefully we'll be able to show you that in the short term. We're also announcing OCR support, so we can support scanned documents, scanned PDFs, and TIFF files that are not text. We can integrate the indexing of that, the OCR and indexing of that content through an automated process. And Ed's going to show you that today as well in the demonstration, so that'll happen all as part of the integrated process. of indexing, in this case PDFs. Another feature of 4.5 is the high-speed indexing of forensic images. So we've been able to support the indexing of forensic images. You were required to mount them first so they could be crawled. In this new 4.5 version, no need to mount the images. It will scan the evidence files automatically. So if you've got hundreds or thousands of evidence files on disk, you could just leave them on disk and point index engines to those folders or those environments, and it'll index that content. And this release will support AccessData 81, EnCase, EO1, and LO1 formats. So that's the bulk of, or the major enhancements in 4.5, and it should be coming out to the market shortly. So if you think about the EDRM model, I mean, what we've really specialized is really the support on the left side here, supporting the information management side. So really the identification, preservation, collection, and processing piece of that model. So with this version, with version 4.5, we are adding relativity support, which will allow you really the review and analysis and production support. So that the idea is that when dealing with large volumes of data, we can cull it down very cost effectively all the way downstream through production with relativity. So that's, it's an exciting new feature that really helps really control costs and control the audit trail of managing this ESI. So in terms of, I'm going to take you through a few slides before Ed gets into the demonstration. It's really, we're going to talk about the identification process of data. Again, one of our key advantages here, which Octane has the ability really to support, online network data, service file shares desktop. Email today we support Microsoft Exchange and IBM Lotus Notes and internet-based mail, forensic images, as I mentioned, EnCase and AccessData images, and then backup tapes. All that archived content can be indexed directly. So one of the powerful features that people are really starting to appreciate with Index Engine's Octane platform is the ability to have a single view into all that content. So if you are using tools to index email, different tools to do backup tapes, or maybe sending it to a third-party service provider, or yet another tool to do online network data, at some point it needs to all come together to provide dedupe and denisting algorithms across the full data set. With a single platform, it happens automatically and early on in the process. So you could really eliminate the use of multiple specialized product and services and really standardize on a single platform for a unique audit trail. So again, this is the Index Engine's appliance. Again, supports online data sources, email, forensic images, and backup tapes. And I think today Ed will show you mostly supporting of online data and email processing. The product there, again, the tech specs, it's a single high-speed indexing platform, again, up to terabyte per hour. I mean, the key challenge there is getting the data to the index engine at those speeds to be able to tap into that level of processing. Very intelligent processing, incremental updates, deduplication. The single engine is optimized to support 70 terabytes of data. It's very secure, plug and play, connects to many different environments. So what we can do here is you can schedule indexing jobs. I think one of the advantages of the Index Engine's Octane workflow is you can go into the interface itself and you can go in there and set up jobs to be on a scheduled basis. So, I mean, you can schedule them using the scheduling capability. And the nice thing about that is some of our partners have been using this for on-site deployment. So if you're going out to do a collection at a remote site, or you're a third services provider that's going out to the end user or the client, you can set up these collection jobs in advance and bring this box and sit it on site, and it'll incrementally update the index on a scheduled basis. So when indexing all ESI, all the content and metadata can be fully searched. It supports, again, all common textual-based user file types, and again, Exchange. And beyond EDBs, there's support for OSTs and PSTs as well. And as well as support also for IBM Notes. So the unique feature with our email processing is that we're not using MAPI-based tools. We don't found that MAPI-based tools were too slow for maintaining the processing speeds in the Octane platform. So we really engineered access to these database environments, email database environments ourselves. So by avoiding MAPI-based tools, we get higher speed processing. But the other advantage is that it's more comprehensive. So we'll typically index more content versus systems that use MAPI to crawl through the file directory structure of the email database. So we'll process logs, journals, dumpsters, tombstones, process corrupt mail. If you have a corrupt Exchange database, for example, Octane can process that and process as much content as possible. So it's really a bottom-up indexing approach versus a top-down crawling approach. And as the data is indexed, it generates a unique document signature via MD5 for deduplication purposes. So the collection product is still fairly new. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that today. So again, another advantage of the platform is that it provides forensically sound collection capability. So it's really a legal hold or preservation archive. So when processing data, if you've got a full data set from all ESI sources, so maybe it's a mix of Exchange and notes, PSTs, forensic images, backup tapes, hard drives, and so on. You can set up your collection policy, which is a very specific query of content, or if you just maybe want to be a little bit more general, you can set up a custodian mailbox query, so a set of custodians that need to be collected. Point it to that data set, and what happens is the responsive ESI will be preserved in Octane's collection platform, which is really a legal hold archive. So the content is extracted at a bit level. So if you were, for example, had an Exchange database and we're extracting John Doe's mailbox out of that Exchange database, it would extract the slice or the appropriate bits out of that Exchange environment and preserve it in the Octane without converting it, especially email, to EML or MSG format. So if you're just worried about preservation, you can preserve it in the collection in a forensic image of that content. So it's the appropriate bits being preserved. So I think Ed will show you some use of the collection product today. So the nice thing about that is if you were, which we'll talk about, is going on site and doing collection, you can go and grab a snapshot or an image or a bit level image of that data and bring it back to your lab for processing. And if you need to extract the native ESI, the original ESI, you can extract it out of the collection without the need for the original source. So even though the original source is over here in the full data set, you've got a bit level image of it in the collection and can extract it as required without the original source even being connected to the environment. So when to work with the interface, which again it'll show you, when you have the option to search either collected or the uncollected data. So the uncollected data is stuff that hasn't been processed yet. Collected is really the responsive ESI that has been extracted and preserved on legal hold. In terms of a lot of the automation, in terms of the settings, you could set up a number of preferences to automatically filter out redundant data. So a lot of clients that use index engines for backup tapes, for example, there's a lot of redundancy in backup tapes because it's really a backup of the same content over and over again. So you could suppress redundancies, which will eliminate that content. You can suppress duplicate data. There's a number of different options on how you can suppress duplicates. And then you can also turn on denisting as well to eliminate data system files like EXEs and DLLs and so on. The user interface it's actually been redesigned for a bit. I mean, it's fairly new. So for some of the current clients of index engines, you're familiar with it because it's not in the market. For people that haven't seen index engines in a while, it's still fairly new. But it was designed to be intuitive, easy to use, really accelerate the culling process. The query engine, again, has intuitive search and culling interface for Boolean, proximity, similar search, and so on. Perform regular expressions or regex searches. And you can search across all metadata and content of files, emails, and attachments. In terms of metadata, it's comprehensive view into the files and emails. So it allows you very detailed times, for example, like access time, created time, deletion time, backup time for documents. So you could dynamically cull through data and say, I want to focus on a specific server or a specific custodian mailbox, filter it down to that environment, and then do some detailed search. Also Custodian Collection, so a lot of our clients are just using it to pull specific custodians. You could browse through Exchange environments, even Exchange environments on legacy backup tapes. So if you're indexing a legacy backup tape, you could browse through the Exchange environment, see the custodians, even the folders within the custodian mailboxes, and be very refined as to what you select, what, John Doe's inbox, and, sent mailbox to the entire content of John Doe's folders. Also the active reports, if you haven't used the active reports within Index Engines, a powerful interface that gives you high-level summaries of data by certain criteria. There's a whole set of canned reports, like last modified, owners of the data, and so on. One of the more useful reports is the domain culling report. So what you can do is, say you're searching on email, you could filter it down to a specific number of custodians and say, I want to see the sender domains of their emails. So it'll give you the specific domains to look at the communication frequency between that specific custodian and outside environments. It'll give you a internal reference for any internal email. You could also use it to select email that's communication between the outside counsel, to tag that as privileged content. Also eliminate spam and things like that. So I'm going to quickly go through the representative workflow to give you an idea of what Ed's going to demonstrate, and then I'll let Ed have at it in terms of showing you the 4.5 product. But an example workflow which we find to be very effective, and I know we have a processing lab here which Ed actually runs that uses this workflow pretty effectively. As really the first step is really defining the collection policy. So you can narrow down your scope, which is the culling of the data, to say specific custodian servers, emails, databases, and so on. In this case, what we're looking for is Sue Clark and John Doe's email between March 13, 2006 and January 8, 2008. So you can see the query that's built here, and you could use the query builder to build it or build it yourself directly. In this case, we're using all possible iterations of the email alias. There's a number of them that exist. And what you're going to see here is storing the query. In this case, we're storing it in a query called collect. Is going to trigger that for automated collection into the legal hold archive. So what you can do is then, once this collection policy is defined, which is a detailed query that's stored, you can really point to the different data source environments. So again, online data, email servers, forensic images, backup tapes, whatever it may be. So indexing can occur once for a static collection or incrementally for a dynamic environment. So typically when you're going to go out and do a single collection, you're going to point once to the data source, and indexing will automatically happen. And because that query is pre-populated and stored as a collection policy, what's going to happen is you're going to automatically copy the responsive data into the collection. So the key point here, and the nice thing about that, is that the original source is no longer required. So if you're processing backup tapes, you don't really need the backup tapes because the data is in the collection. If you're doing processing on site, you can bring the index engine off-site back into your lab and not go back to the original source. So what happens here is that when you collect the data, you've got a full forensic image of that content that you could tap into later for production of email or files. Once the data is in the collection, you could switch over to the toggle to the collection and say, let me now search on the collection, and you could start defining your culling policy. So culling policy is different from the collection policy in that the data is already collected. Now we need to refine that data. So again, you could cull out privileged email and spam, as I mentioned here, using that domain report. So here you can, if in this case, for example, CNN is spam email, you could just simply uncheck that content, or even tag it as spam email. If, for example, Mercury News is your outside law firm, say, for example, you could tag that as privileged and filter that out as well. So the tagging tool in combination with the reports, very powerful feature to refine your data set. The fourth step is then define your detailed culling policy. So you've filtered out the irrelevant content. You can go in and use the content culling to type in keywords, Boolean search, expression search, and so on, any kind of metadata search, and find the relevant responsive data set. Once you get the responsive data set, again, Ed's going to show you this today. In this case, you can extract it onto legal, extract it into an archive for long-term preservation, extract it into third-party tools. In this case, we're going to show you our new feature to extract it into relativity, the load file into relativity, or you can extract a text file report, which could be useful for analysis or just for a file listing for the legal teams. And then there's a lot of automation. I don't think we're going to show you this today in the demo, but all queries and policies that can be defined can be stored, and you can set up a schedule basis. So if you had the index engine sitting in a network environment, you could set up that policy and have it run on a daily basis, and it'll incrementally extract into the collection or legal hold any new and updated content. So the automated policy collection capability allows you to ensure that your collection is up to date and accurate. So, I mean, 4.5 is really a big jump for us in terms of support for full EDRM capabilities. A number of key partners have been integrated into the platform, and the goal is really to make your identification, collection, processing, and review experience much more cost-effective and much more efficient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to Ed, and we're going to go into the actual demonstration.
Thanks, Jim. What I wanted to do today is really take you and step you through this intelligent workflow and actually show you the 5 steps that Jim talked about, walk you through the 5 steps of actually processing ESI data automatically and the manual methods for loading into the archive, as well as some of the new functionality that Jim talked about. It really starts with defining that collection policy, as Jim mentioned. So on our demo server here in the search interface, what I want to start out with is show you that I'm really starting with a blank slate here. I've got nothing in my collection server. So as Jim mentioned, by the settings, I can show collected, and this is really just searching that legal hold archive. Running a search on that archive, I've got nothing in the archive at this point in time. My next step is now to define that collection policy, that query that I want to run after processing the data to populate that legal hold archive. So I've got that policy defined, as Jim had mentioned, with a collection saved query. This particular query is saving 3 mailboxes, again with the different variants of those 3 owner names, as well as limiting the send time from 3/13/2009 to 7/8/2012. So it's as simple as, setting up your collection, defining your policy. Now you're ready for that second step, that auto-identify and collect the ESI. That all happens on the administration interface. So it's all about processing that data, whether that data be on backup tape or whether that data be on a LAN segment. I'm going to start out and show you where that collection is actually defined within the administration interface. So within our collection, I've got a collection defined. I've got it pointed to a storage location on one of my NAS servers that has an NFS export, and I've got the collection policy, the automatic collect, set to on. What this is going to do is actually is going to automatically run that collect policy that I defined as soon as the data is processed, that index segment is processed. So my next step is actually processing the data. I've got a LAN job defined for a specific small set of EDBs. It's a small EDB, an associated journal EDB. So I'm going to run that, let that collection policy run on the completed segment, and then we can go back into the search interface to search that collection. So I've got a job previously defined, and this is our new LAN indexing interface. I'm going to filter on the job name. Got an Exchange Journal job. Filter on that. At this point, I can look at the job and edit that job if I want, but if I can see the details of that specific job in here. At this point, I just want to start that job and start the processing, start that land indexing job. Was successful. I can watch the history of that job as it is running. It's going to be a very short job. It's processing those EDBs. It's already complete. And you can see that I processed about 100 megabytes of EDBs at 17 megabytes per second from that source where those EDBs are on. It was on one of my NAS servers. Created a segment 6 segment, and I can automatically go and view the details of that segment that were completed and watch the progress of my collection job. The segment itself obviously is not complete, where it's going through its post-processing. And the collection is really a part of that post-processing. So it's starting to post-process, but at this point I can also see the details of that segment. I processed 10 Exchange databases, 4,000 Exchange email messages, and various other documents that were attachments to those emails. As the post-processing, you'll see the last part is the collect post-process. This is the process that will, once the segment is complete, will actually start the automatic collection. And I can monitor that as well. Go over to my administration interface, look at that particular job, and see that we've automatically kicked off. We've actually kicked off and have completed that automatic collection on that segment. So we're populating that collection with those files that were responsive to that collection policy. So it's as simple as setting up the collection, defining your policy, and running your jobs with the automatic collect on to populate that collection. Let's go over to the search, back to the search interface, and we're really at step 3 of that Jim talked about earlier, defining and the culling policy. So first we're going to do is actually go in and look at the collection itself and the documents that we moved into the collection. Again, going back, selecting where I want to search. I want to search on only documents that have been collected, and hitting the search button. And showing now I've got all the documents that were responsive to that collection policy. Jim talked about being able to use the reports and starting to call down on that data. So again, these were all Exchange messages, but I want to look at the owners that were contained within that. Again, remember I defined those 3 owners within my collection policy. But I'm really only interested right now, I want to identify and do some further culling. I can do that right from the reports page. So I can cull down on just the documents from John Webb, start that search, and now I quickly cull down to one mailbox, and I can view the results of that mailbox itself. One of the things I can do at this point in time is start to identify and use my search parameter, my capabilities to find, say, privileged information. I can select various documents that may be considered privileged within that document, add the tag privilege to those documents, and now I can use my queries, my search capabilities to identify and tag all privileged information. Now, that really demonstrates the ability to automatically populate the collection upon the completion of processing data. There's also a manual method to populate the collection as well. Let me clear my slate here, clear my thing, and now I'm going to search all my documents, all documents throughout that I processed, not just my collection. But I want to be more specific. I can use my filters now to do content-based searching. I can search based upon file metadata, document-level metadata, email properties, or I can define my own set of search terms. What I want to do now is find those documents that I processed previously prior to this demo using the OCR capability. And I can identify those documents that were processed using the embedded OCR capabilities with a simple OCR process, and identify those documents. I see that I've got 6 documents that were actually processed using our embedded OCR. What I have the capability now of, because we processed those with the OCR, I can actually see within the reconstruction all the words contained within those documents. So now I have the ability to actually use my search functionality to search within documents that have embedded images that were processed using the OCR capability. Once I determine now manually, I can even add these documents to the collection. So being able to select these documents and then adding those to the collection by hitting the collect button. Oops. Content and together. So let me go back here. I've just got to modify my preferences a little bit. And together, content, and just change that preference really quick. I forgot to do that prior to the demo. Go back to my results. And now go and collect those documents. Add those to the collection. Oh, I've got to select a tab. Add those documents, give it a job name, and now those documents are actually going to be added to that collection. I can monitor that process as well via the job status screen. So I'm going to add those 6 documents to my collection. Once this is complete, I can go back. We can go back and actually search the collection and locate those documents as well. We'll let this complete. It should be done in 1 second. Oh, just to give you this is one of the documents, the PDFs that I did index, the one that I did show you. So this is the actual PDF image that was scanned, put in a PDF that I indexed and showed you before. So back to the demo. Those 6 documents were added to the collection, and now I should be ready to actually search the collection. So going back to my results tab. Let me just clear my search out here, go back to my settings, searching on everything that's in the collection right now, running my search, being able to go over to my reports and my file types, and I actually see this is the owners. I go to file types, I'll see the documents, the email documents, and also those 6 portable PDF documents that were added to the collection. Now, I can actually go down and do further detailed culling, as Jim described in step 4, with my results. So I want to clear, and what I've done is created what I think is kind of a typical a search, a saved query. From my saved queries, go down, and I want to find all of John Webb's mail that were not that are not privileged, and all the documents that were processed by OCR. And I used a saved query to do that. So I'm going to extract from my collection now, because now I'm running this search. Also saved with it was it searching from the collection. So running this search, all documents that were processed using OCR, as well as all the documents for John Webb, excluding any documents that may have been tagged privileged that we showed before. I can now run that search, see those results. I've got 10 email messages and 6. And see those results. Run those documents. And what I can do is actually select either all the documents themselves or subsets of the documents if I wanted to. Selecting all the documents now, I can run an extraction job and create a relativity load file at the same time. To do that, I just got to wait one change. I'm going to add a production here so that make sure that when I do the extraction, I'm only getting those documents that were not extracted before. I can run that search, select the documents, create an extraction job, call that extraction, give it a name. I'm going to call it test extract. Now what I have the capability here on my extraction is the ability to create a relativity load file for those documents. I have the ability to put in a prefix, call it demo IE, give it the number of digits, in this case 8 digits. Still have the capability to select an email format, MSG or EML, and give it a destination where I want those documents to go. This is a destination, a CIF share that I've got on my network that is linked with my relativity client and load and server. And submit that extraction job. You'll see the job 460 was created. Always going back, I can monitor the status of that job, running, extracting those 13 files, and going to create that load file. I can go to that that server, and let's just go. That's not what I want. Go out to that CIF server, extraction on 182. That was job 460. Go over to job 460, and you can see within that directory my data file where all the data is located. I've also got all the reconstruction text in the text file and the .dat file. Oops, and the .dat file for the load file. Once that's out there, I have my relativity server linked to that file. If I go to my relativity server, log into my client here, go to all my workspaces, pick out my all case templates, I'm sorry, all case templates, go to my relativity customer demo, and there are my 13 files that have now been loaded automatically into relativity. I can go to my emails, document the prefix, as well as the number ID. Here are the PDF files themselves. If I select one of the PDF files, we'll just start there, and I can see the extracted text for the PDF file. I can also see all the fields for that particular PDF file. Go over to the native file itself. There's that PDF file, as well as within the viewer and view that particular PDF. And again, all the fields, the metadata fields that I used in my mapping, which can be customized by the user, all the file names, the folder paths, and so forth. Same is true for any of the emails that were in that as well. Going over and being able to select those emails, looking at those emails within the viewer, the native or the extracted text, and again, all the fields within that were mapped within that particular load file. And that's really the heart of the demo. Again, intelligent workflow, being able to define the policy, process the data, automatic collection of that data into the legal hold archive, being able to search that archive, do extensive culling on that archive, being able to process documents that were in images with using the OCR capability, and extracting documents out using the relativity load file. Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ed. So that'll wrap up our session for today. I know we're running a little bit late, but I think it was some good information, so I appreciate everybody's patience on that. But if you do have questions, my email address is there. I'll get it to the correct people. If you want further details on the new Octane 4.5, it's not in the market today. We should have a release date very shortly. That's being announced next week. Thanks again. If you do have questions or comments, reach out to us. Look forward to speaking with you in the future. Have a good day.